Yeah, so that was the biggest thing for me. When I first got this bike, I was actually a little bit disappointed, but it's all about suspension setup. I got it and I was like, whatever, it's not that much funner than my other bike. But now that I've got the suspension really dialed in, I really love this bike. For being very minimal amount of increase in travel, like the actual increase in travel over my old bike is not that much. The amount of performance I get with that little bit of an increase of travel is just amazing. And you can really just put this bike wherever you want and it'll go, which has been super fun. All right, so it's a mountain bike review today instead of my normal gravel bikes. I know my channel is primarily gravel bikes, but I actually got a new mountain bike a few months ago. Been having lots of fun on it. So I thought I would throw together a quick review of this bike. To highlight, this is a Rocky Mountain Instinct 2025, the newer model. This is a bit of a custom build, although it looks similar to the ones you can buy built out. So this is full RockShox suspension. We have a Lyrik up front, and then on the rear we have the Super Ultimate Deluxe shock. The drivetrain is the Sram GX Transmission. The brakes are TRP, carbon bars, and then I am running a bit of a heavier Maxxis Minion tire. I don't normally run this burly of a tire, but since this was first on kind of a full trail bike for me, I thought I'd try the thicker tire just to get a little bit more performance out of it. It is a much slower tire than I'm used to, that's for sure. If you want to see something really funny on this bike, this is a tire plug right here. And then I also have right here, there's a patch and a tire plug on the inside. So because this bike is so much more capable, I've just been riding it a lot harder than I have any other bikes, and this back tire is just taking a beating. Thankfully these have been holding, haven't been losing air, but yeah, this is like a couple months of riding and I have like 3 or 4 tire plugs and patches on this thing already. So this bike's a 150/140, which is a slight increase on my previous bike. I was previously on a stump jumper with a 140/130. I did a lot of research and I felt like out of all this bikes I could purchase, this was the one that kind of sat in the middle of trail and a good pedaling bike as much as possible. I was going to get the Pivot Wildcat LT, which I think is a cool bike. A little bit more expensive than I would want to pay for it, but this just had a slightly more travel and I thought would be more capable than that bike. What I will say is I've never felt like this bike is incredibly smooth. Not that it's a rough ride, but the shocks, the suspension, the way I have it set up, it's really set up to ride hard. And when you start riding it hard, you really get a lot out of it. But on regular like gravel roads like this, it's not a super smooth bike. I thought was surprising, like I thought more suspension and it would be smoother. I think for me what it ended up being was more suspension just means I can ride the rough stuff that much harder than on my previous bike. So yes, like this is not bumpy, but the suspension is supportive, is a good way of saying it. The suspension is very supportive, which makes for a really good pedaling bike. So my previous bike stump jumper was 140/130. It was an extra large, so it was a little bit longer. And that thing I felt like was basically a cross-country bike almost, just the way I rode it. This is just as fast on the uphill as that bike. And one key difference is that suspension had a climbing mode that I would always switch into. So when I was going uphill, I would flip the switch on the shock into climbing mode, and I felt like it made it a little bit stiffer and just performed a little bit better. I never touched the shock on this bike. I always leave it in fully open, and it still climbs exceptionally well. Again, it's something about that RockShox just being more supportive on the top end of the stroke And then as you get into it on rough riding, you have really all the suspension that you need. Other thing I really love about this bike is you can set up the suspension, the layout really however you want. So in the headset, you have cups that you can change out, and it'll tip the front end either 5 degrees forward or 5 degrees back. On the rear shock, you have their 4-point system that changes the progression of the shock. It changes the bottom bracket height, it changes the front end head tube angle, it changes a lot of things. And then on the rear, you can also change out the actual length of the chain stays. Although I will say one caveat with that is if you're on the GX transmission system, you cannot do that. If you look right here, this may have just been oversight. This is where the battery goes on the transmission system, and there's basically zero clearance. You actually have to really pry that battery out there. And if you were to move this forward, there would be no clearance and you wouldn't be able to get a battery on it. So keep that in mind if you are running the transmission system, the GX. I know on the other transmissions, the battery's on the other side, but on this one specifically, you cannot change the chainstay length because that battery would get in the way. The cool part about this bike, as always, is it has in-frame storage, super easy to get access to. You just open that up, has all your goodies in there, really easy to access that. Bike has a spot right here for an air tag, so if your bike gets stolen, you can keep track of it as long as the thieves don't watch this video. So right now I have it in spot 4, which is the most slack position, and I do feel like you ride more into the shock on this position than you did on the least slack position. So on the least slack position, what I felt like was obviously more of a cross-country bike with the front wheel under you, and you ride more on top of the suspension instead of into it. In this position, on position 4, I feel like when I'm going downhill hard, I'm interacting and directly in line with the shock. I'm not on top of it. So you know exactly how it's gonna perform. Obviously in this position, you sacrifice a little bit of pedaling ability, but I'm not doing cross-country races, so I don't care. In my current setup, I'm about 200 pounds. I'm running 105 pressure on the fork. I'm running 275 on the rear shock. I'm running about 26 PSI on the rear tire and about 20 PSI on the front tire. And I find that is like the sweet spot for suspension setup. I get a lot of performance out of this bike. And the funny part is I don't actually feel like I'm getting a lot of performance. Like I'll go down a rough trail and be like, that was a really rough trail. Like I really fought hard to get down it. But then I look at my like Strava times and I'm significantly faster than any other bike I've done it on. So it may not feel faster, but you are a lot faster on this bike, or at least I am. So if you're exploring this bike and you look at it and you think, that might be too trail of a bike or too much suspension and it won't pedal very well, it's quite the opposite. I was a little bit wary at first, but this thing pedals really well and performs really well across a variety of categories. I thought my stump jumper was like the Quiver of one. This is also like a Quiver of one, but you just get extra travel and a lot more performance that comes with it. And the amount of options you have with the setup and the customability means if you are gonna go do laps at a bike park, you can just change the layout of the bike, the suspension setup, the headset, and build it into that park bike. And then if you're gonna go do a lot of miles, you can switch it back. I would definitely not want to switch out the headset on a trail. You could do it, but it'd be a pain. But the rear shock, to switch that into different positions, you do that in like 2 minutes. You just basically pull that pin out, flip it to the position you want, and you're good to go. So yeah, don't shy away from this bike thinking that it has too much travel and you won't enjoy pedaling it. And same on the other side, like I wouldn't shy away from it if you're thinking you need more travel. I get a lot of big hits, big drops on this bike, and I have a great, fun time on it. Yeah, see, this is like a perfect example. This trail is rough right here, and I'm going pretty fast. The bike is not smooth, but it's not rough. Like, you can get a lot of performance out of it and know that you can just keep pushing it faster and faster, and the suspension will be there to support you. Some bikes are smoother on this section, but you don't feel like you can just push it as much. This bike, everywhere I ride, I'm like, yeah, I have more. I can push it harder. I never feel like it's out of its depth. And then considering how well it pedals, with how well it goes downhill, you've really got a bike that'll do anything and everything you want. Like, there's nowhere I wouldn't take this bike and feel good about that. Yeah, so that would really be my one big piece of advice on this bike. When you first get it, take a shock pump with you and spend a good amount of time playing with just different air pressures, setups, compression, all of that. Play with it all. It really makes a big difference on this bike, more than you would think. 5 pounds in the wrong direction on either the tire or the shocks, it'll make it not a fun bike to ride. But when you get that sweet spot, it's really a blast. Yeah, once you get that suspension dialed, you're really good to go. Yeah, so I know primarily gravel bikes on this channel, but I do a lot of mountain biking as well. Thought I'd throw together this quick review. If you liked it, please subscribe. I have another review on my stump jumper, which I was riding before this. Tons of reviews on gravel bikes. As always, thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Yeah, this section right here, I call this section the tire killer. There's a lot of sharp rocks, and you end up being off camber on them, and you always get tire slices. I've lost 3 or 4 tires on this trail, but you can definitely rip on it. Super fun today. Ew.